Hey, this is Gary Jennings from Serverless Guru here, and today we're going to look at Deno. So Deno is a runtime for JavaScript similar to how NodeJS is a runtime for JavaScript, and actually the same guy who's behind NodeJS 11 years ago is behind Deno as well, so that's kind of cool. And Deno just has like a lot of really cool ideas. In particular, how they do packaging is super interesting. So we're going to look at that in this video. But before we do that, let's try to understand how to get started with this. So if you go to deno.land, you're going to get a bit of a description here and some installation instructions. I went ahead and just did the first one and it worked out great for me. I'm on a Mac. Then you get to this getting started section, and when I first saw this, I was a little bit confused because it looked like small pieces of like a complete project. So I didn't really know what I was looking at, but actually what you're looking at is full complete programs. So you don't need node modules, package.json, like a bunch of stuff. You can just have files, and these files can have everything they need to run, which is super cool. So let's go ahead and copy this command. And I'm just going to confirm I got Deno happening on my terminal. Yes, I have Deno 1.1. Great. Now, if I copy and paste this command, we got Deno run. And this is really similar to if you were to like do node space index.js. That's going to run your index.js file in the folder that you're cd'd into. So Deno run is similar to that, but instead of a file, we got this URL here, so that's different. Let's press enter. Okay, don't really know what this is doing, but let's go back to this site and try to understand what's going on here. So if you go to the standard library and go to examples and welcome.ts, here we go. So you'll notice this is the same as this. So this is actually a file. This is a file that lives at this URL. And so what we're doing is we're doing Deno run this file that's at this URL. To really kind of drive this home, let's copy and paste this into our index.ts file here. So we'll do welcome to local Deno, local file Deno. And if we were to do Deno run index, so that's a little bit more, that makes more sense to us Node.js people. But notice it's the same thing. So we're either going to run Deno run a local file, or we're going to reference a URL and run the file at that URL location. So it's super interesting. And so when you hear Ryan talk about Deno, he's like, when you think about NPM, it's a centralized place for packages, but that sort of goes against the grain of the web, which is like this distributed thing. And so what if we approach packages, from a distributed point of view? If we just made it, not centralized but distributed, it's just at URLs. So that's interesting. It's very different than what I'm used to, and I think what Node.js community is used to. And the other idea that he pitched was like, it'd be cool if Deno was sort of like a web browser, but for code. So when you hit a URL in a web browser, you visually, you see something visual, and it's easy to get to things because they all have an address, which is a URL. What if Deno was like a browser for code? So you hit a URL, but rather than seeing something visual, you actually run a program. Yeah, it's a really cool idea. Okay, so we can run programs from a URL. The next example is this guy here. This wasn't immediately obvious to me, but what they want you to do is copy and paste this into an index.ts file and run it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. The reason why that wasn't obvious to me is because, being a Node.js person, I was like, well, I can't just copy and paste that code. I need to set up, I got to do npm init. I got to npm install things. But you don't need to do that in the Deno context. So let's just copy and paste this thing and run this command again. So we're going to get an error here. Another thing about Deno is that it tries to be secure by default. So you have to explicitly say allow net in order to run this server. So we'll do allow net. And there we go. We got a server running. We can click on that and we got a hello world thing going. So a few things to notice here. There's no package.json, there's no npm init, there's no npm install, there's no npm modules. It's just one file, and not only can we run commands from a URL, we can actually import code from a URL. This is super interesting. So I've made a few programs with Deno, and the thing that really came out to me when I was making these, when you get farther along in a project, was how much config I didn't have. So like I'm used to having a webpack.config.js, ESLint config, jest config, obviously package.json config, TypeScript config. I'm used to just like mountains of config in my tree structure here, and I'm just used to like I think people from other programming communities look at this and say, we're crazy to have so much configuration, but you just get so used to it. I'm used to having to squint through all my configuration files to find my actual files, and when you start working with Deno, when all that's gone, you realize how insane it is. And when all you have are like real files in your file tree, it's pretty nice. And that's what this allows you to do. So when you have a when you have a file like this, this is a module in Deno, and everything that the module needs to run is in here, in the code, not in config files. So that's pretty cool. And so if you want to look at what else is available, of course, there is a central spot here on the Deno site for you to look at different modules, but they're also just like you can hit any URL if you wanted to. So you might be wondering, if I wanted to make my own, how would I do that? Could I just like literally serve a raw file? Well, let's take a look at that. So what I have here is a for sale project. I have an HTML, index.html, and then I just have a TypeScript file. So I'm going to have a console.log, and let's go ahead and deploy that. And so if I click on this, I can see my index.html. If I was to go to Gary says hi, it would like go ahead and download my file. But rather than do that, I'm just going to copy this and try to Deno run it, and it works. So that's pretty awesome. So we can just run URLs. What if we were to make something that more resembles a module? So we'll do uuid.ts, and we'll do export default math.random times like 1,000,000. And if we were to go ahead and deploy that, if I was to copy this, and let's just get rid of all this stuff here, and we'll do import UUID from the URL I just deployed. In this case, I'll do uuid.ts. Let's go ahead and try that. This can't work, can it? It's too simple. It does. So that's cool. Super simple. One file, not 1,000,000 config files in one file, just one file. It's pretty cool. I really, really like their take on packaging.